Welcome back to Lux. Today I explained a movie named Premonition from 2007. So let's start. In a lovely American town in suburbia, Jim and Linda live with their girls Bridgette and Megan. They have a lovely coexistence. Albeit of late things have become tense on the grounds that Jim is continually out on work excursions. One evening, the telephone rings and Linda doesn't get it on time. The one leaving the message is Jim, who is away on another outing. He says he intended what he said before the young ladies an evening or two ago, and that he believes Linda should recollect it. Yet before he can add more, he needs to hang up in light of the fact that he's getting another call. Linda doesn't comprehend the message and gets back to him. Yet she additionally gets the replying mail and requests that Jim get back to her prior to returning to her errands. This remembers putting stickers for the glass windows to keep away from mishaps. In a little while, Linda gets a visit from Sheriff Riley, who brings terrible news. Yesterday Jim passed on in a fender bender with a truck. Linda doesn't comprehend on the grounds that she just received his message on the machine. However, Riley guarantees her it's valid, leaving her in a crushed at this point numb state. Crying, Linda makes a cursory effort around the house prior to going to the school to get her girls, not giving them the news until they're protected at home. A couple of hours after the fact, Linda's mom Joanne comes to the house to assist her little girl with everything, and Linda calls her dearest companion Annie for help as well. Yet she's met with the replying mail once more. That evening, Joanne stays in the visitor's room. However, Linda nods off on the love seat gripping to a wedding picture. The following morning, Linda awakens in her bed, wearing different garments. She accepts her mom moved her. However, when she goes to keep an eye on her, Joanne is mysteriously absent. At the point when she hears a few commotions, Linda goes ground floor, and she's stunned to find Jim nonchalantly eating. Not surprisingly, Linda feels rather off-kilter since, supposing that it was each of the fantasy it felt inconceivably genuine. Yet clearly this is better. In the wake of dropping the young ladies at school, Linda really looks at the replying mail. However, it has no messages. At the point when she goes out to the supermarket, she's occupied to such an extent that she nearly hits another vehicle. Sheriff Riley comes to mind her and gives her an admonition. However, he doesn't perceive her. At the store, Linda meets with Annie and inquires as to whether yesterday she got a message from her. Yet Annie says she didn't. A short time later, Linda returns home to continue to deal with her errands. She begins with the clothing and is astounded to discover some garments that she was certain she previously washed. Then, at that point, when she goes to the nursery to hang the garments, she coincidentally stumbles on a toy and falls on top of a dead crow, which covers her in blood. Feeling disturbed, Linda races to clean up and toss the crow in the garbage. Later during supper and sleep time, Linda can't quit gazing at Jim, not accepting he is genuine. The next morning, Linda awakens alone in bed wearing Jim's shirt. She finds many subtleties that confound her further. There's a container of wine on her night table. Every one of the mirrors around the house are covered with covers. And there's a jug of medication in the kitchen sink. To exacerbate the situation, when she goes ground floor, she finds Joanne and Annie are dealing with Jim's memorial service. Linda blows a gasket since she swears there's something off base, and no one comprehends when she says Jim is alive, so she disregards her friend's concern and goes searching for their little girls. The young ladies are in the nursery, and when Linda keeps an eye on them, she's upset to find Bridgette takes care of her face with scars, in spite of the fact that Megan actually believes she's the most gorgeous princess. Bridgette needs to understand what it resembled when Jim kicked the bucket, and when Linda answers she doesn't know since she wasn't there, Bridgette thinks about how they can know he's dead then. Some other time when the funeral car shows up at the memorial park, Linda requests to be permitted to check the body out. The burial service laborers would rather not open the casket in light of the fact that Jim got injured severely in the mishap, and Linda starts contending with them since it's her entitlement to see. The representatives get anxious and coincidentally drop the casket, making Jim's head carry out and Linda to separate. When the final resting place is brought to the grave, the cleric says a few words, and Linda sees a lady watching the service from a far distance. Joanne doesn't have the foggiest idea what its identity is, so Linda goes to ask her. However, Claire says they previously talked yesterday and leaves in her vehicle. Not thinking often about the reality, Linda swears she never saw her before in her life. At the point when the family gets back, Linda investigates the medication container and finds it was endorsed by Dr. Roth. Linda searches for him in the business directory and finds the comparing page was detached. However, when she's going to surrender, she turns away and finds the missing page is in the junk. Linda attempts to call Roth's office, yet it's as of now shut for the afternoon. At night, the family gets a peculiar visit. Linda doesn't remember him yet. This is Dr. Roth, who is here with Riley to remove Linda under the doubt she hurt Bridgette intentionally. Joanne beseeches her girl to make sense of how Bridgette got those panics. Yet Joanne doesn't recall and starts blowing a gasket at the allegation. A lot of medical caretakers snatch her forcibly and remove her in a rescue vehicle. Minutes after the fact at the emergency clinic, Linda is left attached to a seat, and she will hear Roth telling Riley that Linda came to see him on Wednesday, and she definitely realized her better half would kick the bucket. This makes Riley believe Jim's passing might not have been a mishap, all things considered. Subsequently, Roth makes it lights out time for Linda with an infusion, disregarding her supplications for kindness. The following morning, Linda awakens in her home once more. Commotions from the washroom demonstrate Jim's back, and Linda hurries to grip to him under the shower, not mindful on the off chance that she gets wet as well. At the point when the young ladies awaken, Linda finds the scars are proceeded to call them both her lovely princesses. In a little while, she feels an odd smell coming from the garbage bin and finds the dead crow is still there, decaying as though weeks had passed. This makes her apprehensive, so she surges inside to track down the page with Roth's number, just to find it still flawless inside the book. Minutes after the fact, Linda goes to see Roth, who doesn't perceive her. She fills him in regarding the dreams she's been having, and after he checks for any conceivable psychological sickness, Roth endorses a similar medication Linda has seen on her sink. A while later, she goes to see Jim at his office to ask him for what good reason he doesn't invest more energy at home. She needs to disappear with him and the young ladies and to have a legitimate talk with her significant other. Yet Jim has a gathering to join in. At that point, Claire appears and acquaints herself with Linda, as though she didn't have any acquaintance with her. Then she takes Jim to the gathering. Watching them together causes Linda to acknowledge Jim as undermining her. Later at home, Linda chooses to toss the medication in the sink. Out of nowhere, a tempest stirs things up around town, and Linda requests that her little girls help her bring the clothing inside. Bridgette runs without focusing and winds up running into the glass window, getting her entire body injured. Linda promptly takes Bridgette to the emergency clinic and is presently joined by Jim, who guarantees everything will be fine. At night, Bridgette is permitted to return home. She's solid, yet her face is brimming with scars. Linda covers every one of the reflections of the house, so Bridgette can't see herself, and tells both of her girls they're lovely princesses. Thereafter, Linda goes to mind Jim, who is feeling awful. He asks why Linda didn't put the stickers on the windows like she guaranteed, and Linda makes sense of that she figured she did. Jim doesn't completely accept that and says she welcomed Joanne to remain a couple of days to help Linda, inferring she's been acting insane. Linda starts crying and swears she's a decent mother, yet she's disregarded. In a little while, Linda tracks down the yellow page in her pocket and tosses it in the rubbish. This causes her to understand she's been surviving everything that she found in those peculiar dreams, and that implies she's been having dreams representing things to come, and she can utilize this data to affect the present. She gets a few pen and paper and draws a course of events with everything she knows, reaching the resolution Jim will bite the dust in this timetable during her next excursion for work. This prompts Linda to ask Jim not to go on that excursion, but rather Jim deviates, calling attention to that their relationship needs some space. The following morning, Linda awakens on the love seat, and Joanne is still around the house. Linda finds the course of events she made and adds more data, acknowledging Claire is another going against point she really wants to explain. Subsequent to leaving the young ladies with Joanne, Linda goes to see Claire and affirms that she was engaging in extramarital relations with Jim. Then she goes to see Annie to share how vexed she's about the entire arrangement. Yet she likewise contemplates whether it was great that the mishap happened on the grounds that Jim's issue might have annihilated the family. A couple of hours after the fact, Linda goes to the bank to affirm the home loan, and her little girl's schooling have been dealt with. Jim likewise left her an annuity. Shockingly, the financier says Jim was here before he departed on the outing, looking exceptionally anxious and needing to be certain his family would be fine without him. Next, Linda goes to watch the neighborhood lake briefly of Harmony, and a man that lives close by tells her this is the ideal spot to move to when you really want to begin once again. In conclusion, she goes to make the game plans for Jim's memorial service. At night, Linda hits the hay with wine and Jim's shirt. At the point when Joanne minds her, Linda inquires as to whether allowing Jim to kick the bucket is equivalent to killing him, yet Joanne doesn't grasp the inquiry. The following morning, Linda awakens with Jim and advises him to go through the day with the young ladies in the recreation area. In the interim, she goes to see Father Kennedy to share what is happening. Kennedy educates her concerning many instances of unexplained peculiarities in history, and how they were viewed as risks of the fickle in light of the fact that they came from individuals who lost their confidence and were frantic. As Kennedy would like to think, Linda needs to focus on what's significant in her life and battle for it. However, Linda doesn't have any idea what she's battling for. Then, Linda goes to mile 220. Where Jim's mishap should occur. Every one of the dreams she's been having hurry to her brain and occupy her to the point she doesn't see a vehicle coming. However, fortunately she moves away in the nick of time. At night, when the young ladies are going to hit the sack, Linda requests Jim let them know he cherishes them. Jim guarantees he adores his girls and his significant other more than all the other things on the planet. Then, at that point, Linda goes outside to get some natural air, and when Jim comes to mind her, a contention results. Linda maintains that things should resemble in the bygone eras. However, Jim's certain he's giving the family all that and can't comprehend what she needs. Out of nowhere, lightning strikes an electrical cable and kills the crow that Linda would track down later in the course of events. 2 or 3 runs back inside, and Linda apologizes to Jim for her way of behaving. Then, at that point, both of them get playful. At the point when they're finished, Linda admits she's envisioned about Jim's passing. Yet Jim guarantees everything will be fine. And it was only a fantasy. The following morning, Linda awakens and overreacts when she doesn't see Jim. She calls Annie to affirm in which course of events she's in. Then, at that point, finds a note from Jim saying he's dropping the young ladies at school prior to leaving for his outing. Linda runs out of the house while calling Jim to stop him. Yet Jim is too occupied to even consider getting first with the young ladies and afterward with going to the bank to organize everything for his loved ones. The discussion Jim had with Linda the previous evening won't leave his head, and when he gets in his vehicle to go on the outing, he chooses to call Claire and end their issue. Then he calls the house telephone and leaves the message on the replying mail that Linda heard toward the start of the story. At the point when he hangs up on the grounds that another call is coming in, it is Linda herself calling him from her vehicle, since she's following him making a course for attempt to stop him. Linda apologizes for everything, and when Jim is going to admit the undertaking, Linda says she definitely knows and couldn't care less, inciting Jim to guarantee they will start chipping away at their relationship more and begin once again appropriately. At that point, Jim sees Linda in the vehicle mirror and heads over to sit tight for her. Linda prepares for a gathering, however she goes nuts when she sees they are on mile 220. The spot of the mishap. She desperately advises Jim to turn the vehicle around, and when Jim moves, a vehicle comes from the other way. Fortunately, Jim moves in the nick of time. Linda is glad to see her significant other is fine. Yet it appears she failed to remember Riley had referenced a truck caused the mishap. Jim attempts to begin the vehicle again to get off the street. However, the motor isn't working, and unexpectedly, the notorious truck appears, running acceptable into Jim's vehicle. Linda hurries to mind him, however before she can draw nearer, the two vehicles detonate, and Linda has a breakdown as she at last comprehends the future can't be changed. Numerous months after the fact, the young ladies wake Linda up from her rest, while the moving trucks show up to get them. Linda is glad to see Bridgette's scars are generally proceeded to recollect Kennedy, advising her to battle for what makes the biggest difference. As of now, what makes the biggest difference is Linda's tummy, since she is pregnant, thanks to that the previous evening with Jim.